Welcome to Bluefish Radio. I'm your host, Lawrence Gunther. Bluefish Radio is a show about the future of fish and fishing in Canada, so you will have the skills you need to become a steward of your favorite fishing hole. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Bluefish Radio live on video. So we'll have both a video and an audio on this. It'll be out as a podcast in audio format, but we wanted to do a video on this because we got some really cool people. We wanted you to meet these people. These are all local champions and heroes and scientists and conservationists, and they have a story. They came together and they made an incredible thing happen that I want them to tell you the story about how they protected some vital fish habitat, bird habitat on the upper St. Lawrence River, habitat that's crucial to the muskie population. So we're going to hear from the upper St. Lawrence Riverkeeper, John Peach. He's also the executive director of Save the River. We're going to hear from Jeff Garnsey. He runs the Musky. It's a classic wood strip muskie fishing boat. He's third generation muskie guide on the St. Lawrence River, and he's also the chair of the board of directors for Save the River. We're going to hear from Dr. John Farrell from the Thousand Island Research Station, and we're going to hear from the executive director of the Thousand Island Land Trust, Tilt, and where they came in on all this as well, and how they sort of saved the day. They're the heroes. They're the knight in shining armor, the guy with the white hat. And anyways, a great story. I don't want to give too much away. Well, I just gave most of it away already. Let's bring John Peach on, please. John, welcome to Bluefish Radio live video, my friend. We've done some podcasts. We've done podcasts live on the St. Lawrence River, and I've been invited to your annual general meetings, and good to talk to you again, sir.
Lawrence, it's wonderful to talk to you. It's always great to talk to a fellow fisherman and conservationist.
Tell us about Blind Bay and why you sent out the urgent red flag on this and how this unfolded.
Well, you're going to hear from people that are more expert on Blind Bay in a couple of minutes, but Blind Bay is historically one of the most significant muskie breeding or spawning grounds in the Thousand Islands area of the St. Lawrence River, and it's on the New York shore, and it's been a kind of a quietly known secret for generations that this is an important muskie spawning ground. And we heard through a newspaper article about 2 months ago that the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol was planning to buy that site and build a pretty major industrial barracks and facility right there, along with docks for their many boats that they need to run in and out of there. And frankly, we were aghast because, as I said, this is such a significant breeding ground for the muskie. And we all know muskie have been under tremendous pressure in this area and frankly, all the Great Lakes for a long time. So we thought about it for about 10 seconds, and then Jeff Garnsey, our board chair, and I went to work with our outreach people, and we put together a letter to CBP, to Customs and Border Patrol, with our opposition and the reasons for the opposition, the scientific reasons about why this area just could not be taken over and dredged and turned into a industrial barracks. And we ended up getting, I think, over 1,100 signatures, people joining in with their emails, with their letters, going to CBP and explaining what an important environmental treasure this is and why they had to go find another facility that wasn't right over this important muskie breeding ground.
Yeah, John, how did the rest of the members and your of Save the River, what was their response to all this? I know they're very active, very, very active people, and you've got hundreds and hundreds of solid people in that organization.
Well, we've got about 1,400 members. Lawrence, I've got to say the response was incredible. We did not have one person come back to me or to Jeff or to any of our staff and say, you know, why are you doing this? This is wrong. The response was just overwhelmingly in support of the opposition to this project. And we also worked with other organizations in the area. We worked with Thousand Islands Park, which is a historically registered community on the other side of the river. We worked very closely with TILT, the Thousand Islands Land Trust. We worked with a lot of individuals. So once we put that outreach out there, people got on it right away.
You even had some senators writing in at the end, like within 2 months, all of a sudden there was letters from senators who were opposing this that you got on side.
Right. You know, Senator Schumer, who is a fisherman, he comes up here and he fishes a lot out in the lake. He understood the issue right away, and he wrote a letter suggesting that they should go find a place that wasn't so environmentally sensitive. And we had New York State senators, New York State assemblymen, we had local Jefferson County legislators get on it. So we had great support from politicians. We had huge community support. I mean, the communities of Clayton, the town of Orleans, Alexandria, everybody got behind this. The town of Orleans, where this blind bay is located, passed a resolution saying that the project should not go there.
It's a lot had to do with timing too, didn't it, John? I mean, you didn't come to this fight at the last minute. You knew that the best time was to get on this before decisions were made. And talk to me a bit about that.
Well, we came to it, frankly, a little later, I guess, than we would have liked to. But the minute we saw it, we mobilized. We had great input. John Farrell helped us with some of the scientific wording. And we knew we had to put on what's called a full court press. We had to go at it very hard. We took all the resource that we had to push this out and to get other people to sign on. And it's a major commitment. We're a fairly small organization, but the end result, which you'll get to later, made it all worthwhile.
And what lessons did you take from this, John? And what are your recommendations for other conservation organizations like yours that are facing this type of significant sort of threat to the environment that you're there to sort of safeguard?
You know, I think the lessons that I took away from this is when you see the right battle, you got to jump into it fully committed. You've got to bring in your community partners, because the riverfront community jumped on this too. And to have another partner like TILT, the Thousand Islands Land Trust, who owned the adjacent piece of property, so this was going to affect their valuable preserve too. It just all lined up, and we all worked together. We all pulled together, and you know, the end result is, I think, going to work out well for the muskie. There's 53 other species that breed in there. There's wetlands that'll be protected. So it's a big win for the environment.
John, we'll get back to you for some panel discussion, but let's get Jeff Garnsey on here. He's a muskie guide and the chair of your board, but I want to hear from him in terms of what muskie mean and what this bay means to the muskie. You know, because it's really a circle of life here. It's a one life, right? I mean, we give, we take. Jeff, how you doing?
I'm wonderful. I'm wonderful. Thanks for having us all together.
My pleasure, Jeff. Last time we were together, it was on your beautiful boat, the Muskie. Tell the viewers what your boat is about quickly. I mean, this is a beautiful boat.
Muskie is as much a part of the river as my family is. My grandfather, my dad, and myself have all had duplicate boats, all Chris Craft's sedan deluxes. So they're oak keel, mahogany plank, teak deck boats. Mine in particular is a 1953, and in about 4 years, it'll be my son's when he retires, and he'll be the next Garnsey, Captain Garnsey on an old Chris Craft fishing muskies.
This means a lot to you guys. It means a lot to your family, to the community. to the heritage of the area, right? I mean, it's not just a sort of a passing fad or something you just stumbled into and, could easily just drop and move on.
No, it's as much a part of the DNA of the river as it is my family. I would really be understating it if I didn't first say that the two of the most significant players for me, one of them's on here with us, Steve LePan and John Farrell. When I was a youngster, they used to do a lot of research, and I'm talking in the 70s, mid 70s. They did a lot of research right in my front yard. I lived on the head of Grindstone, directly adjacent to one of the most valuable muskie spawning grounds in the basin. And they were already very tuned into the fact that this was not an endless supply of fish, that this predator, apex predator, was important enough that it should have a lot of time invested. And fortunately, they were able to push that agenda and that idea onto folks that thought that every time you caught a muskie, you hung the white flag and you hung that fish up in front of Bertrand's for a photo op. And those days are behind us, thank God. So when Blind Bay came along, it was startling that it could possibly happen. It was like there are 100 different similarities that I can see ashore that happen where we do the same thing and we expect different results. But this was one of those deals that when John and I chatted about it, it was a total resource right now, all in. It wasn't one of these, well, we'll show our support and we'll see what comes of it. We talked for just a very few minutes, and both of us decided without any reservations at all that all other work was going to have to take a back seat, that this was what we were about. So it became our #1 priority, and we started ringing the bells, and any news network that would hear or listen, I took them down in my truck and trudged through the mud and got them out to the bay and got the interest stirred up. And it was all hands on deck from the very, very beginning. And thank goodness, John Farrell gave us the information and the ammunition that we needed to at least sound intelligent, because fishermen, if they don't know the answer, they're going to make it up. So God only knows what I'd have told him had it not been for John.
Well, Jeff, put your fishing hat on again, would you? And just walk us through the history of muskie fishing on the St. Lawrence River. Take us back in time again, and
Sure.
With your grandfather and how it's evolved over the years and changed.
Well, even only as far back as I can remember personally, when I was a deckhand for my grandfather, it was almost a spiritual thing, muskie fishing. It had almost as much to do with the experience as it did the fish. But it was a bragging right that, very few people got to hang that big white flag on their boat and come into the town docks. And it was a community involvement thing. I mean, you saw a white flag, the Thousand Island Sun was right there to meet you, and that fish hung in front of Bertrand's or the hotel or the Hubbard or Harold House back then. And it was really a big thing. Only the best went out there. You could spend years not doing it just exactly right, and you'd never get that fish. So it was ingrained in us. But from the very, very beginning, there was a thought about that fish with my grandfather and his father before him, and certainly my father. It was that the fish was seen in reverence. It wasn't just food. It wasn't just a trophy. It was a part of what it is that kept us at the river. So, and that's never waned.
Wow. And bigger, smaller, more, fewer? How's that going?
It seems like the last couple of years, we've really seen some monsters. You get that. When I was a youngster, of course, back then there was not catch and release. So it was not unusual to catch several that were in that 36, 40, 42. And once in a great while, you'd see that 50 incher. But when my dad caught the biggest, muskie in Canada and the United States in 1979, that fish only weighed 41 pounds and 12 ounces. He was 52.5 inches long. We catch bigger fish than that every year now. Now, if you want to win the biggest fish, he's going to be 55 to 56 inches, or he's gonna place back in the field.
Truly, this is where world records have come from for the last 100 years, and probably the next world record will come from as well. Or is it still the place for the current world record?
No, it is in voice recognition only, but Lawton's record was long ago debunked. And at the Thousand Islands Museum, where they keep the Muskie Hall of Fame, we have that unfortunate investigation. But like I said before, fishermen do lie. I think my last 44 incher is now 52 inch. So they do grow post-mortem.
Right.
Well, in reality too, because you put them back, so you got to take that into consideration over time, right?
Absolutely, you gotta measure on a curve.
But this idea of putting them back alive and not bringing them in, and that's pretty much the standard now, isn't it?
It absolutely is, and it adds a layer to muskie fishing that I had never been exposed to. And you know, I've fished saltwater, and I've been lucky enough in the time that I spent in the military that I fished all four corners of the globe. And to this day, there is nothing that you can put up against that will feel even close to the feel when you're stabilizing a muskie off the side of an old wooden boat, and you feel those petrel fins pulse, and you feel the tension of his tail as he swims away and pulls his fin out of your hand. It can't be replaced. Yeah.
It's amazing. Like, you go down there and you see some of these sports stores, and they've got these dusty, you know, skin mounts of muskie of all shapes and sizes. Some are as fat as pigs, and the other ones are long and lean like, you know, snakes. It's just the difference in the DNA and the difference in the fish is just amazing. But these are all ancient, you know, taxidermied fish mounts. You don't see any fresh ones on the walls, that's for sure. I mean, people now, they're getting the acrylic mounts, and they look better than life apparently, and they last forever.
They're gorgeous. There's no excuse to do a skin mount anymore, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. What are your concerns, Jeff, for this blind bay and for muskie and for, you know, the heritage of your family and your son coming into the business when he retires?
Well, if Flynn's Bay is any lesson for us, the absolute best thing we can do to blind bay is nothing at all except just protect it, because Mother Nature seems to find her way, and whenever we try to change the current in our favor, we end up kind of muddying the waters and messing it up. So if that could be kept forever wild, it would be absolutely the best thing we could do for that bay. Because if given the opportunity to come back, they will.
Jeff, we're going to get you back on for the panel chat in a minute, but let's get Dr. John Farrell on up, because I think people want to know too, what's going on with the muskie in the St. Lawrence River.
Hi, Lawrence. Good to see you again.
You too, sir. Last time we spoke, you had some pretty disturbing news to share about the relationship between a virus, large gobies, and large muskellunge. What's going on with the muskie? And then let's talk about this bay as well, and the neighboring bays, because I know you're familiar with all of that.
Sure. So as you know, I'm John Farrell. I'm a professor here at SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry, and I'm director of a field station, the Thousand Islands Biological Station on Governor's Island off Clayton, and we run an aquatic research program, and one of our primary roles is to help understand and manage the fish populations in the upper St. Lawrence River. And we really are entire existence is due to muskellunge, probably northern pike as well, but muskellunge and muskellunge research. So we started as we heard from Mr. Garnsey quite a long time ago, and have built a long-term research program to to monitor fish populations, learn about them, and kind of develop what we call an information base to guide management and understanding about our fisheries and the aquatic health of the river. So that's been our goal, and we're funded by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation and also the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in this effort. We work with students, and they come up and get training and research, and we have developed long-term data sets to monitor fish populations, including muskellunge, which takes an incredible amount of work each year. So we've monitored musky populations since about 1983 in the system. And we have an adult population monitoring that occurs during the spring spawning season, and also through the capture by anglers. So we have a diary program. We work with anglers. It's always been a really close partnership with the community and the angling community. And we also monitor the reproductive success of muskellunge through the presence of young on the spawning and nursery grounds. So we use that information to kind of track population status, how the fish respond to regulation changes, and like what Jeff mentioned, which was the voluntary catch and release of muskellunge. And we also look at how changes in the environment affect their reproduction, changes in habitat. We monitor the quality of their habitat, and we work with the Cornell Veterinary College as well, and studying diseases in muskellunge. And you mentioned the viral hemorrhagic septicemia. That's a very important disease that's still in the ecosystem. I remember speaking with you, and I had my graduate student Anna Conklin on. So if listeners want to look back in the archives, I think there was a pretty good discussion we had about this disease. But the disease came into the system in the early 2000s, and it's still with us, and it's mutating and changing. And it had some pretty dramatic impacts on the musky population. We manage the fishery internationally, so we work very closely with folks from Ontario. Historically, some of the greatest scientists, including Ed Crossman, who was one of the co-authors of the great book on the fishes of Canada, and then also Dr. John Castleman at Queen's University, and also the Glenora Fisheries Station. And we currently work with Collin Lake. So there's a muskellunge working group that was formed under the Great Lakes Fishery Commission that's still active. We meet annually and discuss fish with the scientists and work with the community to help ensure like a bright future and sustainability for muskie. But since that disease and the influx of invasive round goby into the system, there's been some uncertainty about the future because, we've seen a significant decline in the adult stock according to our indices. And then we've seen, a really alarming reduction in the number of young being produced on the nursery grounds. So that's something that's led to a really great partnership with Muskies Canada, also Muskies Incorporated. And right now we're launching a Muskie citizen science program. So we're enlisting the help of dedicated anglers on both the US and Canadian side to help in detecting these pit tags that we've put in muskellunge that have been released in nursery habitats as part of a program to rebuild the muskie population in places where it's been depleted due to some of those problems we've encountered. So I know that's a lot to absorb, but that's kind of a summary of some of the past and some of the active things going on.
It's just incredible how devoted you and your team are, and a bunch of other players who care about this fish population, because you know what it means to the ecosystem. These are the apex predators, and if they go, the whole system could just go awry, right? It's not the canary, but it's certainly an indicator, and a very important indicator. So make a link then to that Blind Bay and the surrounding area for us.
Sure. So there's been a great deal of work on both sides of the river through a management plan to identify critical spawning and nursery habitat of muskellunge. And in the past, we've done radio telemetry studies, and we've sampled and done models and figured out the primary habitats for the species. We're still identifying a few new ones, but it's not as frequently in the past. But there's, roughly over 100, about 100, 110 known spawning and nursery habitats. And some of these range from basically small patches of vegetation that exist in a site to larger coastal embayments like Blind Bay that are really, reproductive centers for fishes, and they're of critical importance. And Jeff also mentioned Flynn Bay. So there's these sites that have had a history of incredible importance to sustaining our native and naturally reproducing fisheries. And, Blind Bay is one of those. So we've been monitoring Blind Bay since 1990 on an annual basis. So every year we're gearing up to do it this year. We do a spawning survey of muskellunge and other fishes. The survey is incredible. The dedication of the workers, we set 3 dozen to 40 to 45 nets. We've expanded into Lake St. Lawrence downriver with the help of U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And daily we monitor these traps for a month. So the teams, the crews are going out, over 90 miles of river daily to monitor, spawning locations from Cape Vincent to Waddington every day for a month. So it's a huge effort. And then, we follow that up with these seining surveys that, we do 2 surveys, and the survey has 180 seine halls in the survey. So the amount of, in each one of those surveys, there's like something like 6 vegetation surveys that go with that. So, and there's logger arrays monitoring temperature and oxygen throughout the river, and all to learn about how to help us sustain native fish reproduction. So Blind Bay is one of those sites, and it historically, like John Peach said, has been one of the primary spawning sites. We've I think have over 110 muskellunge, spawning muskellunge logged in our database over that period from Blind Bay. And
wow,
what's alarming is there's been a significant decline because of the VHSV, and we're now releasing muskellunge into Blind Bay, and we have been to help restore that population.
These are the juvenile fish that you're hatching and growing to what, 18 inches, I think, or 12 inches?
Yeah, they're smaller than that. So, and there's a reason for that. So so what you're describing, Lawrence, is our population recovery program. So the Thousand Islands Biological Station staff with our agency partners, and we are taking eggs according to a genetic protocol from the spawning muskellunge, and then bringing them back into our wet lab facility and raising them. And we release 2 different life stages. So we release an advanced fry that's 1 inch.
Wow.
Last year, we released over 38,000 advanced fry in the river.
Yeah.
And we studied their survival. And then we also have a fingerling program. So we raise fingerlings that are roughly 6 to 8 inches that receive a pit tag. And we're comparing those 2 strategies. And it's Blind Bay has received, I think, over 500 fingerlings so far that have been pit tagged. And we've also been assessing the success of the fry there in addition to natural reproduction.
Dr. Farrell, this is amazing work, what you guys are doing, and with all your team and collaborators. And, it's so important that we not lose this ecosystem, and that just start to tip like dominoes, and that would exactly what would happen if we lost this apex predator. But let's bring in our last guest, and John, we'll get you back on in a minute. But Lisa, let's bring in Jake Tibbles from the Thousand Island Land Trust. Welcome to Bluefish Radio Live, sir, and thank you so much for coming in on your white horse with your white hat and saving the day. You and your partners, all the partners, so many of them.
Yeah, thank you, Lawrence. I mean, it's truly an honor to be able to join the group today. You know, we're truly excited about the conservation initiative in Blind Bay, the outpour of community support, you know, all in a positive way, and just the collaboration amongst the different agencies, organizations like Save the River, and John and Jeff, but also the Thousand Islands Biological Station, John Farrell, and the work that his team has done to really create just an awesome foundation, not only for our work but Save the River's work, but in addition to really launch advocacy efforts and conservation efforts that help protect critical you know, habitats and ecosystems like we see here in Blind Bay.
Mm-hmm. You did some work with Ducks Unlimited and a bunch of other organizations on a lot of federal money got spent on the bay right next to this bay to do some restoration and address some invasive plant species. And talk to us about that.
Yeah, so, you know, again, you know, land conservation is at the core of the Thousand Islands Land Trust mission. I think, you know, since 1984, we've conserved a little bit over 12,000 acres of critical habitat, you know, along and throughout the Thousand Islands and St. Lawrence River Valley. But in addition to our on the ground, you know, boots on the ground approach of land conservation, we also work with many different partners to help restore some of these areas that have been impacted either by, you know, outdated water levels management plan or residential development impact or agricultural, you know, associated issues. And recently, you know, the project that you're referring to is, you know, Tilt partnered with Ducks Unlimited, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and a group of private landowners to actually restore about 30 acres of you know, monotypic cattail marsh, and really opening up pockets not only for the benefit of a variety of waterfowl species, secretive marsh birds like least bitterns, American bitterns, but also for the fish species that we've talked about here today on your podcast, the iconic muskie and northern pike.
Mm. And this is a big problem, right? These cattails, I mean, they really infill into these wetlands, and eventually it just becomes almost dry land. They really just push the water and everything that lives in the water out.
Yeah, it's really been an issue, and has impacted both muskies and northern pike, but definitely and specifically the northern pike. You know, these, you know, really stemmed by this hybridization of a cattail, invasive cattail species, and a combination of that and the water levels management plan, prior water levels management plan. You've really seen just an increase in these monotypic cattail mats throughout our tributaries and our coastal bays, and it directly, we can relate a direct decrease in several of these fish species and their spawning productivity.
I guess that's not I'm not guessing it's not a secret that your plan of 2014 in terms of water level management and what the what's being proposed or what's being done there.
Well, you know, the new water levels management regimen, which was supported by so many, you know, local community members, you know, up and down the river, Save the River, Tilt, many agencies and other organizations. You know, that's, you know, really the plan to move forward with. And, you know, I think, you know, based on some of the research that we're seeing coming out of the Thousand Islands Biological Station, you know, New York State DEC, you know, these are, you know, this new plan is having, you know, real positive impacts, you know, both in the coastal ecosystems, but, you know, that's trickling down to impacting positively, you know, a variety of different fish species. So
a lot of people are pouring a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and money and sweat and all of that into, you know, preserving these coastal wetlands. And then you hear about Blind Bay from John and others, what's going to happen to it. And you're thinking, man, this is right next door to a big chunk effort we just put into this other bay. And tell us what happened there, what went through your head and what steps you took then.
Yeah, it was really kind of shock and awe. To be honest with you, Tilt has long recognized the ecological importance of Blind Bay, coastal wetlands, the adjacent uplands, and the hundreds of other small bays and larger bays that we have throughout the Thousand Islands. And they're so critical to the overall ecosystem and environmental sustainability of the river itself. And so for us, having already conserved approximately 16 acres and over 500 feet of waterfront adjacent to the proposed site, it really was a shock to us. The direct impact that it would have to our adjacent conservation land, which is, an investment of, approximately, $250,000 of, private funds, federal funds through the North American Wetland Conservation Act. It was surprising, to say the least.
So what did you do? I know what you did, but tell us about it. Tell us in your words.
Yeah. So, right off the bat, once it hit the newspapers, we immediately started working with John Farrell, John Peach and his team over at Save the River. They are just, perfectly positioned from an advocacy standpoint to really be the tip of the spear on an issue like this. So what we wanted to make sure is that we weren't tripping over ourselves. We were really following the lead of the team over at Save the River as far as the advocacy efforts, joining with them and making sure that, our river community is fully aware of this proposal and, kind of the position that these two leading environmental organizations were taking, Save the River and the Thousand Islands Land Trust. Meanwhile, while letting Save the River, kind of take the lead and do what they are just awesome at, we kind of pivoted and said, okay, how can we approach this, from a different angle, more of the boots on the ground angle. So we just proactively reached out to the landowner. And made an alternative proposal. Instead of having this site be utilized, for an industrial, development site or for a facility, the alternative approach, which we could offer, is the expansion of our existing preserve, our existing investment in conservation, and add the 20 or so acres to the existing 16 acres that we have. And so we got the authorization from the board, and our staff got to work, and here we are today. We reached an agreement with Blind Bay Associates, and they've just been awesome to work with. We actually acquired the original 16 acres, from Blind Bay Associates. So we had a working relationship with them, and I just can't say enough about their interest in protecting this part of the river, and desire to work for, basically in the best interest of our entire river community.
I'm not going to get into the dollars and cents of what all that means, but I know from experience there's 1,000 ways to get to the solution, and quite often these sorts of arrangements involve all sorts of various permutations and solution approaches. So no need to discuss potentially confidential information like that, but people must be walking away with a good feeling. Yeah, jobs have been lost, and an economic investment by a government, which is always good jobs, long-lasting jobs, permanent jobs, but this trumped that, right? This conservation effort trumped that, and how did you swing that? Like, you deal with this all the time in your land trust organization. How do you put forward that argument?
Well, I think, first we were very fortunate. Coming off year end, the land trust was awarded, several large state and federal grants that we'd been working on over, during the period of COVID. And Fortunately for us, you know, a lot of that came to fruition toward the end of last year. So we were uniquely positioned, you know, to really pivot again and be flexible and kind of think on our feet and say, okay, even though we weren't necessarily pursuing this property, you know, prior to this proposal, it had always been on our radar. And with some of the grant funding that we had in the pipeline, you know, we were able to think quickly and pursue the property. You know, there's still a lot of work to do. We fully recognize, you know, at the end of the day, you know, there's still the potential for USCBP, a real potential for USCBP to, you know, invoke eminent domain. It could, you know, something like that could happen, you know, before we close on the property or the transaction or officially acquire it. And it's likely that could happen afterwards too. You know, that's one of the reasons why we're being so proactive in reaching out to USCBP and formally offering, you know, our assistance, staff time, whatever it takes, to be able to, you know, both identify and evaluate, you know, alternatives that, you know, will work for, you know, all the river stakeholders, the community members. I mean, there are alternatives out there, you know, that do work, that avoid, you know, some of these major environmental impacts that we could see here if this proposal was to proceed.
Win-win. No one walks away a loser. That sounds like a great way to go. Jake, thanks so much. Stay on, and Lisa, bring our other guests back, and let's have a quick roundtable here. I mean, I think this story is just amazing story, but I think we got to have everyone on.
We're with you, Lawrence.
All right. Hey, so there you go. You guys are the dream team. You won the Golden Cup, man. Good work, guys. Good work, everybody. And I know you got a ton of people behind all of you, and I correspond with them and get emails from them. And there's, you know, we would love to have more of them, all of you on, but you know, you guys did a great job. And where do we go from there here? I'd like to hear from all of you. Like, this is one victory, but it's not the end, right? I mean, this is not going to, you know, solve the problem for ever and ever. I mean, there's been a lot of lost wetlands over the last 100 years. I've heard like 95% of the wetlands in the Great Lakes Basin is gone. So you still got more work to do, obviously, but where do you see us going on this in terms of the Upper St. Lawrence River over the next 5-10 years? Where do you guys all want to be? And John, why don't you start, John Peach?
Well, I think this has definitely raised the awareness of, you know, not only our members, but the members of all of our organizations. And I think there's a real opportunity to move out now and educate those members on the importance of these breeding grounds, of the wetlands, of Plan 2014 and the change to a better water levels management. And I think also it's an opportunity to educate people on the great work the Thousand Islands Biological Station is doing.
Yeah. Good point, John. John Farrell, where do you see the work of your station in 5-10 years from now?
Yeah, well, you know, this Blind Bay interest has really been phenomenal. I've just been moved by the community's response. You know, so a lot of credit needs to go out, you know, to the response of our community in an effort to protect something important. So the wetlands along the mainland and the islands as well have really just received an onslaught of shoreline hardening and change and manipulation and invasive species. And, you know, it's just wonderful to see people to just coalesce and try to protect a critical habitat. And I hope we see more of it because, you know, there's a lot of habitat that's been degraded in the system. You've mentioned the loss of wetlands, and, you know, we need to protect these areas so they can continue to make the river the special place in the ecosystem it is today, and so that can continue.
Jeff, as a fellow angler, and I know all of you guys fish and love fish and support fishing, but when this kind of victory happens and you have conservation groups and water quality advocates and coming together with fishing organizations and anglers, and everyone's rising up together, right? No one's left behind. Well, how does that make you feel, Jeff?
Well, it's easy for a lot of people come up to this neck of the woods and they see these amazing sunrises and sunsets, and they see these gorgeous cascading waters. But when something like this happens, and it happens in such concert from so many different angles, it provides a lens underneath the surface of the water. So now you're not just seeing the sunlight reflecting off it. You're not just seeing that pair of wood ducks or mallards on a bay. You're thinking about what's underneath the bay, what's going on underneath the bay, and to shine a light on that from multiple different directions. You couldn't pay for that kind of coverage. It came at us very quickly, but it focused the entire basin on this one important thing. And it's not something that you can just shake off. I think that it's going to have a ripple effect for years to come, because now we've educated people, and you can't ignore something once you know that it's going on. And now people know the significance of what's going on just under the surface in Blind Bay.
John Peach has been, and the organization for years, Save the River, have been friends of anglers, have been promoting responsible angling and this activity of angling to connect with nature through fishing. Jake, as a land trust organization, how do you feel about working with organizations that are also involved with angling? And is this a new territory for you? Is this something you want to repeat again? How did your funding body and supporters take to all this?
Yeah, thanks, Lawrence. Really, till Thousand Islands Biological Station, Save the River, and many of the other organizations that have, the river and the Thousand Islands at heart, we've been working jointly for years. I mean, whether it's the Common Turn restoration project, it's our, robust educational programs, getting kids out on the land and out on the river. We've got a long history of working together, galvanizing the community around something that's so important, and that's the river. It draws us here. It's just an incredible resource, and at the end of the day, while a project like the proposed facility for Blind Bay could really be disconcerting, Jeff is absolutely right. It shined a light on an area that is so important, and it brought greater awareness to the river community. And we have something special here. No one else is going to protect it. No one else is going to save it. No one else is going to restore it except for us, the community who cares about it. Yeah. And, I think, moving forward, I'm looking toward the additional support of our community members, folks coming out in support of organizations like Save the River, Thousand Islands Biological Station. At the end of the day, we're the boots on the ground, and we can't do it without the community behind us.
You guys are amazing for working together on this, and like, you wouldn't ever think you had any disagreements, and I don't think you ever had any disagreements, but you see this more and more and I've been involved with this now 10, 12 years in terms of conservation activism. We started Bluefish Canada in 2012, 10 years ago, and because there was a need for this. But to bring the angling community and the conservation community, it's not something that just happened. I mean, the anglers have been conservationists for hundreds of years, and to get that recognition as well, and to be able to work side by side with conservation groups is just fantastic, and to see results like this. So good work to all of you. Is there anything that I didn't cover that you guys want to mention? Go, now's your chance. Anyone?
Well, Lawrence, I would just thank you for doing an interview like this and getting it out there to even a wider exposure than just the Thousand Islands area, because I really think this is a model project that other communities could use when you've got the science, you've got the conservation group, you've got the advocacy group. It works if everybody comes together.
Yeah, it does work, and everyone benefits, and everyone's seeing the value that everyone brings to the table. It's really, I think it's opening up the minds of people and creating friendships and working relationships that are going to go on for a long time. Yeah. Thanks, John, for putting it so well and beautifully. Anyone else want to share some last thoughts?
Just thank you, Lawrence, for what you do. I mean, the Bluefish Radio broadcast have really reached so many people with so many amazing stories and carrying a lot of messages to a new community that, you know, hasn't been coalesced in the way that you've done it. So I just want to thank you for, you know, your efforts to help educate anglers in such a meaningful way.
Well, thanks, Dr. Farrell, and I'm looking forward to a visit to your island and the research station. It's going to be it's on my, now that we can travel again safely, it's on my list of things to do. So as soon as you give the green light, we're coming.
And you won't be disappointed, Lawrence.
No, I'm sure not. And Jake, I'm looking forward to getting a tour of the Blind Bay, and we'll make some online video there. And Jeff, you know, get the rods ready, man.
Ready.